have embodied the 1920s. Hello. How's that for drama? All right. If you've been on ye old tube for pretty much any amount of time, you might have seen the format of video that's like, I dressed blank for a week. Now, me being the very on-trend hip grandpa that I am, this past summer I tried to do one of those videos, which was I dressed Nightcore for a week. Draculia. Hoomst. We're back at it, friends. What's going on here? Boy Meets World hair. Stop. Huh? Except this time, instead of Nightcore, dressing as a different decade for a week. I am going to do 1910 through 1970. Now, one thing about these kinds of videos that I quickly realize is that my life is not very interesting. So I'm going to try my best to find something to do for each of these days, but no promises. In reality, I don't do much. Some of these items are reproductions, some of these items are actually vintage, and some of the decades I want to make the outfit. This channel has not and never will be striving for historical accuracy. I am going to try to replicate the makeup and hair. Some of the stuff I straight up just don't have. Was not about to buy some historical undergarments just for this video. We're just gonna have some fun and go on a little journey here through time. As I'm getting older, I don't really have a style. Nah. I am just one big vintage and fantasy potluck. Life is short, dress how you like. As always, when dealing with vintage clothing, vintage styles, not vintage values, I do believe that you can kind of curate what you like from an era and translate it into your wardrobe now without actually being a racist, or a homophobe, or a sexist. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by thredUP. But instead of a whole thrift haul, my 1920s outfit is almost entirely thredUP. Something I really enjoy doing is faking vintage by taking modern clothing and making it look like it's old. What it is a massive online thrift store. I recommend it to everyone. I use it even when not sponsored. It's a really good way to find secondhand items and not really have to worry about the stress of going to the thrift store. I find it's a lot easier sometimes to just sit on your couch, scroll on either the website or the app, just narrow it down by color, size, pattern, material. And then if you are looking for a specific brand, like for instance, I did search for a lot of Ralph Lauren because a lot of items from that brand just kind of read vintage already. But if you were looking for like Target or Free People or Reformation, you can get some of your favorite brands for up to 90% off of estimated retail. That is a brief overview of thredUP. I'll show you what I ended up getting from them when we do the 1920s. But for now, thank you so much thredUP for sponsoring this video. And just for you guys, if you want to save 30% off of your first order, you can head to that link in my description and use my code. Ding ding. Are you ready? Let's do it. All right, so I'm just gonna do my basic Gibson Girl Edwardian updo. It's very easy, as long as it's close enough. It's fine. I'm kind of nervous about this one, only because the more in time you go back style-wise, the more prone you are to receive questions about whether or not you are in a theatrical production. Go ahead and put a lot of dry shampoo in my hair because it's greasy. Have gone out in Victorian inspired outfits before and never really thought twice about it, but I think because I'm doing this for a video and because I am painfully alone, it's gonna be a little bit more obvious to myself. Hey, Papa. Oh, he's throwing up? Oh, baby man.
The next day.
Continuing, because somebody came into my office, threw up, and had a big ol' swollen face, so I think he might have sniffed something that caused an allergic reaction. I needed to play Mama Bear yesterday. But we're back, and now I'm gonna continue where I left off, which was absolutely no progress done. Flip my whole head, and then really brush the hair forward and up so that when you go to make a whole Bulbasaur thing, you don't get any gaps. I'll just show you. Floop. So essentially, you want to look like Deb from Napoleon Dynamite for a little bit. To take that hair, put the ponytail right about here. You just kind of wiggle it back down. If this is too crazy for you, sometimes I just twist the ponytail a little. Twirl it and wrap it around in a little bun. Was that explained well? I don't know. I don't really care too much about the back. What the back of my head looks like is none of my business. All right, hair's done, makeup's done. Let's get dressed. I have officially passed away, cause of death. This fit. I want to wear this and only this for the actual rest of my life. Who is she and what is she up to? I look like a librarian. Yes! Okay, you know, first of all, I was kind of self-conscious about going out in public like this, but honestly...
Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Wow. So it is indeed a chain stitch machine. You can see this straight away. Just under here, there should be a serial number, which there is. A268467. So according to the database that I'm looking at, this says it was manufactured in 1876. Approximately 12,700 machines were produced from Wilcox and Gibbs that year. That's so cool, and that doesn't seem like that many. Oh my god, they've got a little lever on the bottom here where you can just scroll up how many stitches per inch you want. 16, 18, what's the most? 30 stitches per inch. That's so many. That is so many. Oh, I'm so curious to see what we can do with this. So both of the antique sewing machines that I have and that I use in my reconstruction work are, well, they're both from the 1890s, but they're both lock stitch machines. One works with hand turning, like this one. That one is from 1891. And then I've got a treadle machine, which is from 1892, which works by foot powering. This is a hand turn machine. It is 20 years older than both of the antique machines that I already have. So I'm feeling tentatively confident that this is going to be a lot easier to just be working straight out of the package, if you will, which might be a little bit ambitious to think. Okay, first things first, we need to get her undustified and we need some oil. I love the process of cleaning and oiling machines because you get to know them, especially these antique machines that have all the parts exposed. You get to know the machine really intimately. It's so cool. It's so cool how these things work. Like, wow, I had no idea there were this many little intricate pieces and parts and moving bits that interlock with different things. Also, a lot of places for dust to get trapped. You know how dust is mostly just dead skin particles? I wonder how many hundreds of years of human I am inhaling right now. So we are all cleaned and oiled, and the first thing that I'm noticing is that we're probably going to need a little bit of adjustment on the belt here, which I'm a bit nervous about because it's a very old belt. This one has got a brass ferrule, I think is how it's pronounced. I don't know. The manual gives instructions on how to adjust this. However, the instructions say to unscrew it and then to put it back to shorten it. I'm not entirely 1000% certain how that works. Ah, good, it's coming out. Oh, cool. Oh, no, it didn't come out, it just sort of broke. But that's fine because we need to cut it anyway. So that took a lot longer than expected. It took a lot of warm water and soaking the leather. The leather belt is really, really quite rotted, and unfortunately we've lost our second side as well, which means that the belt is now too short for the machine. It's not the greatest loss because this belt is extremely brittle. So I'm going to have to replace the belt. That is not the biggest deal in the world. You can get replacements for these quite easily, and then we shall go from there. For now, this will at least give us a demonstration. So the first thing we have to do is put our thread on. So there's a little hole right here that this just snaps into here. This comes out and goes through. There's a hook and a hole. This is where our little hooks come in very handy because we can just sort of come through here and just use that to pull that through very easily. This then comes around to, this is this automatic tension disc thing. This can then come through this hole here. And then through the next little arch down here. Then we have a little hook thing up here which can just snap straight into place. And then down the next hole. And then finally thread the needle. Cool, and we are all finished right now because there is no bobbin to wind. How exciting. I am back. I have an actual real drive belt this time. I'm determined to make this work. So first thing is first, we are changing our thread. This one is a very old thread. I will say it is so very nice not to have to worry about threading bobbins and winding bobbins and running out of thread on bobbins. It was really cool opening up this front bit here and exploring how that mechanism works. I feel like I sort of understand in theory but didn't quite picture it in practice. But underneath the needle, effectively, it's got a little rotating hook system. So the hook pulls the thread down and creates a loop and just sort of holds it there so that the needle comes back down and picks up that loop again by the time that hook finishes circling around. And that way you sort of create that effect of pinning the top thread down to the bottom with an underside thread, but only with one thread. It's really cool. Oh, it's so smooth and it's so quiet. This was one of the big advertising points of this machine, was that it is quiet. There's a little stitch. Wow, you really don't need to backstitch at all. Wow, is this thread very securely in here. This is not going anywhere, this seam. Oh my goodness, for an antique machine, this stitches absolutely stunningly. There are no flaws, no imperfections in the stitching. Every once in a while on my log stitch machines I'll get, you know, a stitch gets skipped or something, but wow, this is absolutely gorgeous. The underside, and here is where it gets its name as the chain stitch, it looks like a tiny little chain. You can see where the thread is making loops and then pulling itself back up through to the top. The thread is definitely a lot bulkier. Okay, we are doing stitch length. Let's see what 20 looks like. This is, again, going from 13 to 20, and we still have 10 more stitches per inch that we can cram into 1 inch. That is so fine. Oh my god, they're tiny. And it's definitely taking a lot longer to do, as expected. I have to say, the tiniest stitch length is very impressive, but it is not my favorite. It becomes more apparent on the underside that the smaller stitch lengths are not quite as neat as the nice, beautiful, beautiful long stitches. Using the hand-turn chain stitch machine is remarkably different from, well, the treadle machine obviously, but also the hand-turn block stitch machine that I have. What I really notice is that those other two machines from the 1890s, they're very big, especially the treadle machine obviously, because that is basically a piece of furniture. But even the hand-turn block stitch machine it's a thing. It's heavy, it's large, it takes up a great amount of table space. This chain stitch machine is really interesting because it doesn't feel like a machine. It feels like a tool. It feels like something that you'd have sitting on the side of your table, like a pair of shears. It's interesting to think how from 1876 to 1891 and 92, the machines actually get bigger, which is really interesting to think about from today's perspective, where our technology tends to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Granted, the technology of the sewing machine does get a bit more complex by the end of the century. You do have the dual action of the lock stitch, so you have the bobbin underneath and all the mechanisms that have to come with that. It's very interesting to think how the sewing machine went from this tiny little tool that sort of sits on the side of your table to this thing, this presence, as it becomes more prevalent within the essential process of garment making, which is really interesting. The sewing machine actually very significantly impacts fashion throughout the later part of the 19th century, understandably, of course, because it makes the stitching process just 10 times faster. And so they are filling that time that you would typically be spending doing the structural seams of the actual foundation garment, and they just cover everything in ruffles, in pleats, in all this intricate detail you see through the late 1850s, 1860s, 1870s, 1880s as you get into the bustle period. I mean, it would have taken ages and ages to do by hand in the previous centuries. Because people have access to faster sewing methods, they are adding more and more and more.
The sport a look like that, you know? It's kind of like Converse, but in the Regency era. So now that the outfit was ready, I had to do my makeup quickly, which consisted of the usual stuff, which is not much and not good. And then I quickly did my hair, but I ran out of time to record it. So when I was doing my hair, I was like, okay, I need to use the strands because I paid money for them. So I used a curling iron to sort of curl them, and I put them on rollers for them to keep that shape. At the end of the day, they were just too thin. I tried to incorporate them in my hairstyle, but it didn't look great. So I just put them at the back of my head and I sort of pinned them in place. And that was the end of this sad hair story. So now that the outfit was ready, it was time for some typical November activities. First of all, give me one other time of the year where you can sit by candlelight, handwrite letters and poetry while listening to the wind howl outside. There is literally no other better time to do that than in November. So seize that opportunity. Second of all, Bronte books are basically November, but in a book form. So of course I'll be reading all of them. Here is my personal list of best to worst Bronte novels, because I finally read them all this year. Let me know what you think in the comments, but unarguably it's a November read. And third of all, November is all about fog and crows and ravens and naked trees and long walks during which you imagine you're a romantic heroine in search of a better fate. Honestly, people treating November like it's a mediocre part of the grand house of Christmas are clearly not taking enough gloomy walks. Thank you. This is in no way a diss for people that treat November as a pre-Christmas period. You do you. I'm just saying it's a cool month on its own. Bye.
Darlings, in this week's video I'm going to share with you my vintage nightgown collection. I've been collecting vintage sleepwear and nightgowns for a couple of years now, and pretty much everything that I own is from the thrift store. I have a couple of nightgowns that I've bought online, but for the most part it's all from the thrift store for a very reasonable price, so make sure to go and check your local thrift store out because you'll be surprised at what you can sometimes find. And before we get into the video, I thought I'd just let you know that Lacey Faye, another vintage YouTuber, has just released a video about her 1950 sleepwear collection, so I'll link her video down below if you want to go check it out. So grab yourself a cup of tea and let's get into the video. So the first piece I have here is actually a slip, but it's just so pretty and you can actually wear it as a nightgown if you wanted, so I thought I'd try it on. My nightgown collection ranges from the 1940s up until the 1980s. When I go thrifting, I'm usually just drawn to whatever is lacy and beautiful and flowy, so I don't restrict myself to only buying a certain decade of lingerie. So this here is a lovely 1940s nightgown that I bought online through an Instagram account called Audrey Scarlett Vintage, and it is an absolute dream. So I'll try it on for you so you can see how lovely it is. The ruffles on the bodice are my absolute favourite, and I think they just really add to the silhouette of this dress and make it something very feminine and very 40s as well. It's not a silhouette that you would get in the 50s, having this sort of bodice and the waist. And it's just very slim, not flared out and puffy like the 1950s. It's my absolute favourite, I love it to bits. And I thought I would also share with you these gorgeous 1940s heels, little slippers to wear around the house with your nightgown. Aren't they just the cutest? They're so glamorous. I mean, not very comfortable, not for everyday use, but if you are feeling a little bit extra, they are nice to slip on and go to the kitchen to make yourself a cup of tea.